The scream tore through the diplomatic station's lower corridors like a blade through silk. Not a shriek of surprise or alarm, but the kind of sound that only comes from a throat that has never known fear until this exact moment. Commander Sarah Chen's hand moved to her sidearm before her conscious mind registered the movement. The Zytharian vampire queen, ancient, immortal, untouchable by treaty and reputation, did not scream. Chen was already running. The diplomatic wings sprawled across 3 levels of the station, a labyrinth of ceremonial chambers and guest quarters designed to accommodate 17 species-specific environmental needs. The Zytharian delegation occupied the eastern sector, their quarters maintained at near-freezing temperatures and bathed in ultraviolet light that made human skin prickle with invisible fire. Chen had walked these halls 1,000 times during the treaty negotiations. She knew every corner, every security checkpoint, every blind spot in the surveillance grid. The scream came again. Closer now. Raw and terrible. Chen rounded the corner into the Zytharian residential corridor and stopped. The temperature drop hit her like a wall. Her breath crystallized in the air. Emergency lights pulsed red along the walls, casting everything in the color of old blood. At the far end of the hallway, a figure stood motionless in front of the Queen's private chambers. A human child. Maybe 7 years old. Small for her age. Chen's training screamed at her to assess the threat, secure the perimeter, establish communication with command. But her feet carried her forward, each step measured and deliberate. The child wore a maintenance worker's daughter's clothes, the kind worn by civilian families stationed on the lower decks. Her dark hair hung in 2 neat braids. She stood with her back to Chen, facing the Queen's door, which hung open like a broken jaw. "Step away from the entrance," Chen said, her voice carrying the flat authority of someone who had ended riots without firing a shot. "Now." The child didn't move. Chen closed the distance to 10 meters, then 5. Her hand remained on her weapon, though she hadn't drawn it. The child's shoulders rose and fell with steady breathing. Too steady. Too calm. "I need you to turn around and walk toward me," Chen said. "Whatever you saw in there, whatever happened, you need to come with me right now." The child turned. Her eyes were the wrong color. Not brown or blue or green, but silver, like mercury catching light. They reflected the emergency strobing with an inner luminescence that made Chen's stomach drop. "She's dying," the child said. Her voice carried no fear, no distress, just a simple statement of fact that somehow made it worse. Chen moved past her in 3 strides, weapon drawn now, every tactical instinct overriding protocol. The Queen's chambers were vast, a cathedral of ice and darkness lit by bioluminescent organisms that pulsed in rhythm with a heartbeat Chen couldn't hear. The temperature inside dropped another 15 degrees. Frost formed on Chen's eyelashes. The vampire queen lay on the floor. Zytharians stood 3 meters tall, their bodies composed of crystalline structures that resembled organic matter the way a sculpture resembles flesh. The queen's form had begun to fracture, spiderweb cracks running through her torso and limbs. Black fluid seeped from the fractures, pooling on the floor and freezing instantly into obsidian patterns. Chen had seen death in 100 forms across a dozen worlds. This was different. This was watching a mountain crumble, watching something fundamental to the universe come undone. The Queen's eyes, compound arrays of frozen light, focused on Chen with an intensity that made her bones ache. "Poison!" The Queen's voice emerged from somewhere deep within her fractured chest, each word coming with visible effort. "We do not poison. We do not disease. Someone new." Chen activated her comm with a thought, but static greeted her. Jamming field. Professional grade. This wasn't an accident or a random attack. Someone had planned this with precision that required intimate knowledge of both station security and Zytharian biology. The child appeared in the doorway. Her silver eyes swept the chamber with an expression far older than her face. "She called for help," the child said. "I heard her. But the adults didn't come. How did you?" Chen started, then stopped. Wrong question. The child had breached 3 security checkpoints, navigated past diplomatic guards, and entered chambers that should have been genetically sealed against human entry. How didn't matter yet. The Queen's hand moved, each centimeter of motion accompanied by the sound of breaking glass. She pointed at the child, then at Chen, then pressed her palm flat against the floor. 3 distinct gestures. A message. The child walked into the chamber. Chen's hand tightened on her weapon, but she didn't raise it. The girl moved with purpose, navigating around the pooling blood with careful steps, until she stood beside the Queen's massive form. She needs the medical bay, the child said, looking back at Chen. The one in the human sector. Not the Zytharian facilities. They've been compromised. Chen's mind raced through the implications. If the Zytharian medical staff were involved, if this was an internal coup disguised as an attack, then moving the Queen to human facilities would either save her life or trigger an interstellar incident that would shatter the treaty framework. The Queen's chest rose and fell in irregular patterns. Her crystalline structure had dimmed to barely visible light. Protocol said secure the scene, wait for diplomatic corps, defer to Zytharian authority. Protocol said a human commander had no jurisdiction over a sovereign ruler's medical care. The child knelt beside the Queen, her small hand hovering over the massive alien form without touching. She knows you'll break the rules, she said quietly. That's why she called. That's why I came. Because humans answer. Chen holstered her weapon and opened a manual override channel on her comm, one that bypassed standard networks. This is Commander Chen. I need a medical transport to the Zytharian residential sector, human medical staff only, and I need it 2 minutes ago. Authorization code Alpha 79er. This is not a drill. The response crackled back immediately. Commander, we're showing a diplomatic lockdown on that sector. We can't, you can and you will, Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of a career built on making impossible calls. A sovereign ally is dying, and someone on this station wanted her dead. Move now or explain to Fleet Command why you didn't. She cut the channel and looked down at the child, whose silver eyes held understanding that shouldn't exist in someone so young. What's your name? Maya, the child said. And she's not just sick. She's changing. The Queen's fractures deepened, spreading across her body in geometric patterns that resembled nothing Chen had seen in 3 years of diplomatic service. But within those fractures something else emerged. New light. Different structure. The black blood stopped flowing. Chen heard boots in the corridor. Heavy. Multiple targets. Moving with tactical precision. She positioned herself between the door and the Queen, weapon drawn again, as Maya remained kneeling beside the dying sovereign. The footsteps stopped just outside the chamber. Whatever happens next, Chen said softly, stay behind me. Maya smiled, an expression of absolute certainty. She chose well. The first figure appeared in the doorway, and Chen's world narrowed to the simple geometry of angles, cover, and the space between heartbeats where decisions became destiny. The figure wore Zytharian diplomatic robes, but moved with human proportions. A mask covered their face, smooth and reflective, showing Chen her own expression twisted into alien geometry. Behind the first came 2 more, identically dressed, spreading to flank the entrance with professional efficiency. Chen's finger rested on the trigger guard, not the trigger itself. This chamber is under human protection until medical personnel arrive. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. The central figure tilted their head, a gesture that somehow conveyed amusement despite the blank mask. The Queen is Zytharian property, Commander. You have no authority here. The Queen is a sovereign ally who requested help, Chen replied, her voice steady. I'm providing it. She requested nothing. She's dying. Confused. And you're interfering with internal Zytharian affairs that your species cannot possibly understand. Behind Chen, the Queen's breathing had changed. The ragged, breaking rhythm steadied into something deeper, more controlled. Maya remained motionless beside her, one hand now resting on the Queen's fractured arm. Chen caught movement in her peripheral vision. The flanking figures were shifting position, testing her reaction time, establishing firing lanes. Standard breach preparation. These weren't diplomats. They were operators. Last chance, the central figure said. Step aside, or we remove you. Chen's response was to adjust her stance, settling her weight into a position she could hold for hours if necessary. You can try. The tension stretched like wire pulled to breaking. Chen's awareness expanded, taking in everything at once: the masked figure's breathing patterns, the slight weight shift that would precede an attack, the distance to the nearest cover, Maya's position relative to potential crossfire, and the steady sound of the Queen's transformation continuing behind her. The central figure's hand moved toward their waist. Stop, Maya said. The word carried no volume, no force, but everyone froze. The child stood now, her small frame barely reaching Chen's elbow, but her silver eyes blazed with light that made the chamber's bioluminescence seem dim. The Queen is not dying, Maya continued, her voice still childlike but carrying harmonics that resonated in Chen's chest. She's molting. Your poison didn't kill her. It triggered a metamorphosis that should have taken decades. You've accelerated her evolution, and now she's becoming something you can't control. The masked figures exchanged glances that Chen couldn't read but felt in the sudden shift of their posture. Uncertainty. Fear. The child is contaminated, the central figure said. Exposed to Zytharian biology. She doesn't know what she's saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, Maya replied. And so do you. That's why you're here. Not to help. Not to protect. To finish what the poison started before she completes the change. Chen's tactical computer chimed softly in her ear. Medical transport was 90 seconds out. Long enough for everything to go wrong. The Queen stirred. Her massive form shifted, crystalline fragments falling away like a snake shedding skin. Beneath the breaking shell, new structure emerged, darker and denser, shot through with veins of silver that pulsed with bioluminescent rhythms that matched Maya's eyes. The central figure raised their weapon. Chen fired first. The shot caught them in the shoulder, spinning them backward. Training overrode thought. Chen moved, placing herself fully between the attackers and the Queen, her weapon tracking to the second target. Stand down! The flanking figures didn't hesitate. They moved as one, weapons rising, professional and cold. Maya stepped forward, directly into the firing line. No! Chen grabbed for her, but the child was faster, her small body darting past with impossible speed. The attackers fired. Reality bent. Chen saw the energy bolts leave the weapons, saw them arc toward Maya's chest, saw the moment they should have struck. But instead they curved, bending away from the child as if repelled by some invisible force, scorching the walls and ceiling with lines of superheated metal. Maya's silver eyes blazed brighter. She's not the only one changing. The Queen's voice filled the chamber, no longer fractured and weak but resonant and deep. Enough. She rose, her new form towering even taller than before, her crystalline structure now a fusion of the old Zytharian biology and something entirely new. The silver veins pulsed with the same light that shone from Maya's eyes, creating patterns that synchronized between them like two instruments playing the same note. The masked figures stumbled backward, their weapons clattering to the floor. The Queen's hand moved with fluid grace, removing the mask from the central figure. Beneath was a face Chen recognized from the diplomatic corps briefings. Ambassador Theron, the Queen's own chief of staff, his features twisted with desperate fury. You are dying, Theron said, the words coming out like accusations. The old form was failing. The council agreed. Succession was prepared. This wasn't supposed to happen. Succession through murder is not succession, the Queen replied. It is coup. And you have failed. The chamber doors burst open. Human medical personnel flooded in, followed by security forces wearing Chen's unit insignia. They stopped as one, taking in the scene, the transformed Queen, the disarmed conspirators, the small girl with silver eyes, and Chen standing in the center of it all with her weapons still drawn. Lieutenant Morrison, Chen's second, recovered first. Commander? Orders? Chen holstered her weapon with deliberate care. Secure the conspirators for diplomatic tribunal. Sweep the Zytharian medical facilities for additional compromised personnel. And get me a direct line to Fleet Admiral Corhan. She's going to want to hear this directly. Morrison saluted and began barking orders. The chamber erupted into controlled chaos as security personnel moved to restrain Theron and his accomplices. The Queen looked down at Maya, then at Chen. When she spoke, her voice carried layers of meaning that Chen's translator struggled to render into human language. The child heard my call across species boundaries. You answered it despite the cost to protocol and career. Both are acts of bridge building that our treaty could not account for. I was just doing my job, Chen said. No, the Queen replied. You were doing something far more difficult. You were choosing to trust in a moment that demanded trust. Few have that courage. Maya walked back to Chen's side, her silver eyes dimming to something closer to human normal. The connection between her and the Queen remained visible as faint luminescence in her irises. What happened to her? Chen asked quietly, watching as medical personnel set up scanning equipment around the Queen. What happened to me? The Queen corrected. The poison was designed to kill me in my old form. But Zytharian biology has adaptation mechanisms that your species is only beginning to understand. In attempting to murder me, they triggered a metamorphosis that bonds the dying individual to the nearest compatible consciousness. Maya's developing neurology resonated with my transformation frequency. We are now linked. Permanently. Chen felt the weight of that statement settle over the room. Her parents will be consulted, of course. But the bond cannot be undone. Where I go, she must follow, at least until she reaches maturity and the connection stabilizes. This is unprecedented in modern Zytharian history. A cross-species resonance bond with a human child. Maya looked up at Chen with an expression of perfect calm. I don't mind. She's nice. And she has so much to teach me. She's 7 years old, Chen said, directing the words at the Queen. And now she carries knowledge that will take her lifetime to fully understand. The Queen replied. I will not pretend this is fair or just. But it is what happened when she chose to answer my call. She could have run. She could have hidden. Instead, she came. Chen knelt down to Maya's level. Do you understand what this means? Maya nodded. I have to learn their language, their customs, their science. I have to be a bridge. Like you were tonight. That's a heavy burden for a kid. Somebody has to do it, Maya said with a small shrug. And the Queen thinks I'm good at it. She showed me things when we connected. Beautiful things. Scary things too. But mostly beautiful. Chen stood and faced the Queen. What happens now? Now we rebuild trust that was broken by those who should have honored it most, the Queen said, her gaze moving to where Theron was being led away in restraints. The assassination attempt will be made public. The bond with Maya will be announced as a new foundation for human-Zytharian relations. And you, Commander Chen, will be formally recognized as the human who saved the Queen's life at great personal risk. I don't need recognition, Chen said. I need to know this won't happen again. The conspirators will face justice under Zytharian law, which is neither quick nor gentle for traitors. And security protocols will be rebuilt from foundation upward, with human and Zytharian personnel working in integrated units. Your species has proven trustworthy. Mine has proven fallible. Both are lessons worth learning. Morrison approached, his expression carefully neutral. Commander, Admiral Corhan is on secure channel. She's requesting immediate verbal report. Chen nodded, then glanced back at Maya. Stay with the medical team. Don't go anywhere alone. I won't be alone, Maya said, tapping her temple. She's always here now. Chen walked to the communications station Morrison had set up, acutely aware that every word she spoke in the next 10 minutes would be analyzed by diplomatic corps, military intelligence, and probably half a dozen species governments. Admiral Corhan's face appeared on the screen, her weathered features drawn with tension. Commander Chen. I'm hearing reports that sound like fiction. Tell me what actually happened. Chen took a breath and began from the scream. She spoke for 7 minutes straight, laying out events in clear, chronological order without embellishment or interpretation. When she finished, Korhan was silent for a long moment. You violated diplomatic protocol, breached jurisdictional boundaries, and discharged a weapon in a sovereign ally's quarters, Korhan finally said. Yes, ma'am. You also saved the Queen's life, exposed a coup attempt, and prevented an interstellar incident that would have collapsed the treaty framework. That's one interpretation, ma'am. Korhan's expression shifted, revealing something that might have been respect. It's the only interpretation that matters, Commander. You're being promoted to Diplomatic Security Chief, effective immediately. The post comes with expanded authority to act in crisis situations where protocol becomes secondary to alliance preservation. Chen felt the weight of that responsibility settle across her shoulders. Ma'am, I'm not qualified for. You weren't qualified for tonight either, and yet here we are. The job is yours, Chen. Don't make me regret it. The channel closed. Morrison cleared his throat. Congratulations, Chief. Don't, Chen said softly. Not yet. We still have a station full of scared diplomats, a transformed queen, and a human child who's bonded to an alien sovereign. Tonight was the easy part. How is tonight the easy part? Chen looked back at Maya, who sat cross-legged beside the queen while medical personnel worked around them both. The child was teaching the Zytharian sovereign a clapping game, their hands meeting in rhythmic patterns that seemed to bridge more than just species difference. Because now we have to figure out what comes next, Chen said. And nobody's ever done this before. The Queen's resonant voice carried across the chamber. Commander Chen. A moment, if you would. Chen crossed back to where the Queen sat, her new form still settling into final configuration. Up close, the transformation was even more remarkable. The old crystalline structures had given way to something that looked almost like polished obsidian, shot through with those silver veins that pulsed in time with Maya's heartbeat. You're wondering if you made the right choice, the Queen said. It wasn't a question. I'm wondering what the cost will be, Chen replied. For Maya. For you. For the treaty. The cost is always highest for those who build bridges, the Queen said. They stand between worlds, belonging fully to neither. Maya will face that burden. As will you in your new role. She didn't choose this. She chose to answer my call. That was choice enough. And now she will help shape what our species become to each other. That is not a small destiny. Maya looked up from her clapping game. Will I still see my parents? The Queen's form shifted, lowering to bring her closer to the child's level. Every day, if you wish it. And they will be brought into this process as well. This bond does not erase your humanity, child. It adds to it. You will have 2 families now. 2 cultures. 2 homes. This is a gift, though it may not always feel like one. What about school? Maya asked, the question so perfectly childlike that Chen felt something in her chest tighten. You will have tutors. Both human and Zytharian. You will learn things no human has ever learned, and teach us things we have never known. And yes, there will still be mathematics homework and spelling tests, because bridge builders still need foundations. Maya seemed to consider this seriously. Okay. But can I still play with my friends? Of course. Then, I think it'll be okay. Chen envied the child's adaptability, that resilience that let her accept a completely transformed life with the same seriousness she gave to homework. But she also recognized the performance in it, the way Maya's hands trembled slightly when she thought no one was watching. She's scared, the Queen said quietly, reading Chen's expression. As she should be. Fear is not weakness. Acting despite fear is strength. You demonstrated that tonight. So did she. It is a quality our species share, perhaps more deeply than we knew. Morrison appeared at Chen's elbow again. Chief, we've completed the initial sweep of the Zytharian medical facilities. found evidence of systematic tampering with life support systems, medical databases, and emergency response protocols. This conspiracy went deeper than 3 assassins. How many are we talking about? At least 15 compromised personnel that we've identified so far. Could be more. The Zytharian security forces are requesting permission to conduct joint interrogations. Chen looked at the Queen. Your call. Grant it, the Queen said. And assign human observers to every interrogation. Trust must be rebuilt through transparency, not privacy. Morrison saluted and moved off to implement the orders. The chamber had transformed into a command center, with human and Zytharian personnel working side by side in a way that would have been unthinkable before tonight. There will be questions, Chen said. About how Maya could hear your call. About the bond. About what it means for human-Zytharian relations going forward. Let there be questions, the Queen replied. Questions are the beginning of understanding. It is answers that often close minds. A human medical officer approached with a portable scanner. Your Majesty, with your permission, we'd like to run some diagnostics on the neural resonance between you and the child. Understanding the bond mechanism could help us ensure it remains stable. The Queen inclined her head in agreement. Proceed. But Maya's parents must be present for all examinations. This is non-negotiable. We're bringing them up now, the officer said. They were in the civilian quarters when the lockdown hit. They're understandably concerned. Maya's calm facade cracked slightly. Are they mad? They're scared, Chen said gently. Just like you are. Just like all of us are. But they're coming, and we're going to explain everything together. What if they don't want me to be bonded? The Queen and Chen exchanged glances. The answer to that question carried implications either of them wanted to voice. Then, we will find a way forward that honors their wishes while protecting you both, the Queen said carefully. The bond cannot be broken, but how we navigate it can be shaped by many hands. Your parents will be part of that shaping. The chamber doors opened again, and 2 people burst through, their faces masks of terror and confusion. Maya's mother and father, both wearing civilian technician jumpsuits, both moving with the desperate momentum of parents toward their child. Maya! Her mother dropped to her knees, hands running over her daughter's face and arms, checking for injury with a mother's frantic precision. Baby, are you hurt? What happened? They said there was a diplomatic incident and you were. She stopped, her gaze locking on Maya's eyes. The silver had returned, pulsing gently with the Queen's heartbeat. Oh God! She whispered. What did they do to you? Nobody did anything to her, Chen said, stepping forward with her hands visible and empty. I'm Commander Chen. I know this looks frightening, but Maya saved the Queen's life tonight. And in doing so, she formed a connection that we're still working to understand. Maya's father pulled his daughter close, his eyes moving between Chen, the Queen, and the security personnel still working throughout the chamber. A connection? What kind of connection? What does that mean? The Queen spoke, her voice pitched lower and gentler than before. It means your daughter heard my call for help when no one else could. It means she answered with courage that would honor any species. And it means she is now linked to me through a biological resonance that Zytharian science has documented but rarely seen, never across species boundaries. She is unharmed, but she is changed. As am I. Changed how? Maya's mother demanded, her arms tightening around her daughter. Changed in what way? I can hear her thoughts sometimes, Maya said quietly. And feel what she feels. And she can do the same with me. It's like having someone always nearby, even when they're far away. It's strange but not bad. Not scary. Just different. She's 7 years old, her father said, his voice breaking. She can't consent to something like this. She can't possibly understand the implications. You're right, Chen said. She can't. None of us can, because nothing like this has ever happened before. But it has happened, and we need to decide together how to move forward in a way that protects Maya and honors the bond she's formed. Protects her from what? Her mother asked, and beneath the fear Chen heard steel. This was a woman who would fight for her child against anything, even alien queens and military commanders. From being exploited, Chen said bluntly. From being treated as a political tool rather than a child. From losing her childhood to diplomatic necessity. Those are the dangers, and they're real. That's why I'm assigning a dedicated security detail to Maya and your family. That's why all medical examinations and educational protocols will require your explicit consent. And that's why the Queen and I are going to make sure that Maya's welfare comes before alliance politics. The Queen shifted her massive form, lowering herself further until her eyes were level with the parents. I did not choose for this to happen. Neither did Maya. But I will not allow her to suffer for a connection that saved both our lives. She will be protected, educated, and honored. This I swear by my name and my throne. Maya's parents looked at each other, communicating in that wordless way that comes from years of partnership. Finally, her mother spoke. We want to talk to specialists. Human doctors, psychologists, ethicists. We want independent verification of everything you're telling us. And we want it understood that Maya is our daughter first, and a diplomatic bridge second. Agreed. Chen and the Queen said simultaneously. And we're not leaving her. Her father added. Whatever this means for her future, we're part of it. Non-negotiable. Also agreed. The Queen said. In fact, I insist upon it. The bond works both ways. Maya grounds me in humanity in ways that will be essential to my new role. Her family is now, by extension, part of my household. You will be granted diplomatic status, housing in quarters of your choosing, and access to resources that will help you navigate this change. We don't want diplomatic status, Maya's mother said. We want our daughter safe and happy. Then, we share the same goal, the Queen replied. And we will achieve it together. The tension in the chamber shifted, not disappearing but transforming into something more complex. Fear remained, but so did possibility. Maya sat between her parents, her silver eyes reflecting the bioluminescent light, a child caught between worlds but held steady by love that needed no translation. Chen's calm chimed. Morrison's voice came through, tight with controlled urgency. Chief, we've got a situation developing in the main diplomatic chamber. Representatives from 6 species are demanding immediate explanation for the lockdown and the rumors about the Queen. Ambassador Theron's supporters are spreading a counter-narrative that the Queen's transformation makes her unfit to rule. This is escalating fast. Chen looked at the Queen. Can you address them? Not yet. My transformation is incomplete. I need another 12 hours before I can appear in public without risk of instability. Then, we have 12 hours to control the narrative, Chen said. She activated her command channel. All diplomatic security personnel, this is Chief Chen. Prepare the main chamber for an emergency address in 30 minutes. I'll be speaking on behalf of the Zytharian throne with the Queen's explicit authorization. She cut the channel and looked at Maya's parents. I know this is the worst possible time to ask this, but I need your help. The conspiracy against the Queen is trying to use fear of change to destabilize the alliance. If Maya is willing, and if you consent, having her present during my address would demonstrate the bond's reality more effectively than any amount of diplomatic language. Absolutely not, Maya's father said immediately. Wait, Maya's mother said, her hand on his arm. What would she have to do? Stand beside me while I explain what happened. Let people see her eyes, see the connection. She wouldn't have to speak. Just be there. You want to parade our daughter in front of alien dignitaries to prove a political point, her father said, anger breaking through his control. I want to show the galaxy that human and Zytharian can be linked in ways that transcend politics. Chen replied. But only if Maya wants to, and only if you agree. I won't do it otherwise. Maya looked up at her parents. I want to help. The Queen showed me things. Beautiful things. The conspirators want to stop that. They want to keep everyone afraid and separate. If I can help stop them, I should. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. If anything goes wrong, if anyone threatens her or makes her uncomfortable, you pull her out immediately. You have my word, Chen said. 28 minutes later, Chen stood in the main diplomatic chamber facing representatives from 17 species. The space was designed for grandeur, a vaulted ceiling supported by pillars that incorporated elements from each member species' architecture. Right now, it felt more like a pressure cooker on the edge of explosion. Ambassador Tesh, the Vraxian delegate and current coalition speaker, fixed Chen with eyes that saw in spectrums humans couldn't process. Commander Chen, you have called this assembly under emergency protocols. Explain why a human officer presumes to speak for the Zytharian throne. Chen stood at the central podium, Maya beside her holding the Queen's seal of authority, a crystalline artifact that pulsed with the same silver light as her eyes. The symbolism was deliberate and impossible to miss. I speak with the Queen's explicit authorization because the Queen is currently completing a biological transformation triggered by an assassination attempt orchestrated by members of her own diplomatic staff, Chen said. Her voice carried through the chamber's enhanced acoustics, reaching every corner. Ambassador Theron and at least 14 co-conspirators attempted to murder the Queen using a poison designed to be undetectable and unstoppable. They failed. But in the process, they triggered something unprecedented. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Chen pressed on. The Queen's biology responded to the poison by initiating an accelerated metamorphosis. During this transformation, she called for help. That call was answered by a human child, creating a cross-species resonance bond that has never been documented between Zytharian and human. This bond saved the Queen's life and revealed the conspiracy. Maya, the child you see before you, is now permanently linked to the Queen through biological mechanisms we are still working to understand. She is a bridge between our species, and her existence proves that human and Zytharian can be connected in ways that transcend our differences. This is insanity. A voice called from the Zytharian delegation. Chen recognized Ambassador Vryanen, one of Theron's known associates. A child cannot be bonded to royalty. This is a human trick, a manipulation to gain influence over the throne. The bond is verified by both human and Zytharian medical personnel, Chen replied. And the conspiracy against the Queen is documented through evidence gathered from compromised facilities and testimony from the conspirators themselves. If you doubt either claim, you're welcome to review the data. All of it is being made available through secure channels as we speak. Maya stepped forward slightly, her small hand still clutching the Queen's seal. The silver light pulsed brighter, synchronized with something distant that the assembled delegates couldn't see but could feel in the way the chamber's atmosphere seemed to resonate. The child is contaminated, Vryanen insisted. Exposed to transformation energies that have corrupted her. She should be quarantined, studied, not paraded as some kind of diplomatic achievement. I'm not contaminated, Maya said, her young voice cutting through the murmurs with surprising clarity. I'm connected. There's a difference. The Queen is teaching me things. Beautiful things about how the universe works, about how different species see reality in different ways. And I'm teaching her things too. About how humans think and feel and dream. We're learning from each other. That's what bridges do. The chamber fell silent. A human child lecturing assembled ambassadors should have been absurd, but the silver light in her eyes and the weight of the Queen's seal in her hands transformed the moment into something else entirely. Chen seized the silence. The conspiracy wanted the Queen dead because they feared change. They feared a ruler who might evolve beyond the limitations of traditional Zytharian biology. But their assassination attempt didn't kill her. It transformed her into something stronger, more resilient, and more deeply connected to humanity than any treaty could accomplish. That terrifies them. As it should. Because this bond proves that our species can be more together than we ever were apart. Pretty words, Ambassador Kesh said. But words don't rebuild trust. The Zytharian delegation is compromised. The Queen is transformed. The power structure is unstable. How do you propose we move forward from this chaos? With transparency, Chen said. Joint investigations into the full extent of the conspiracy. Integrated security forces operating under both human and Zytharian command. Public trials for the conspirators under Zytharian law with human observers. And a new diplomatic framework that acknowledges the reality of the Queen's transformation and Maya's role as a bridge between our species. You're asking us to restructure alliance protocols around a 7-year-old child, Kesh said flatly. I'm asking you to recognize that 7-year-old child answered a call for help that adult diplomats and guards either couldn't hear or chose to ignore. Chen replied. She ran toward danger to help someone from another species. If that's not the foundation we want to build our alliance on, then I question what we're doing here at all. The silence that followed was different. Thoughtful. Uncertain. Maya's voice broke it, soft but clear. The Queen wants you to know she'll address the Assembly herself tomorrow. She wants to thank Commander Chen in person and show everyone that she's stronger now, not weaker. And she wants to introduce me properly, as her student and friend. She says that fear is natural, but we can't let it make our decisions. We have to be braver than that. The child speaks for the Queen now? Vry Nen challenged. The child shares thoughts with the Queen. Chen corrected. It's part of the bond. And it's something we'll all have to adjust to as we figure out what this means for the future. Ambassador Tkesh shifted her massive form, her crystalline plates clicking together in a pattern that Chen's translator rendered as contemplation. I move that we recess until the Queen can address us directly. In the interim, I propose that Commander Chen's security protocols be implemented across all diplomatic facilities, and that the joint investigations proceed under the oversight of a coalition tribunal. Those in favor? The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was clear enough. The Assembly would wait for the Queen. As the delegates began filing out, Maya tugged on Chen's sleeve. She says thank you? And she says you should get some sleep because tomorrow's going to be hard. Chen smiled despite her exhaustion. Tell her I'll sleep when the conspirators are in custody and the station is secure. Maya's eyes unfocused for a moment, that silver glow pulsing brighter. She says that's what she expected you to say. And that stubbornness is a quality both our species share. She's not wrong, Chen admitted. Maya's parents appeared from where they'd been watching in a secured observation gallery. Her mother swept the child up in a hug that spoke of relief and love and terror barely held in check. You did good, baby, she whispered into Maya's hair. So good. But never again without us right there beside you, understand? Okay, Mom, Maya said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. But it wasn't scary. The Queen was with me the whole time. Her father looked at Chen over his wife's shoulder. Thank you for keeping her safe. She kept herself safe, Chen said. And possibly saved us all in the process. Your daughter is remarkable. She's 7, he said, but some of the anger had drained away, replaced by exhausted wonder. She should be worried about homework and cartoons, not interstellar diplomacy. She'll have time for both, Chen promised. I'll make sure of it. Morrison appeared with a status update. All identified conspirators are in custody. Joint Zytharian human security teams are conducting systematic sweeps of all diplomatic facilities. No additional threats detected, but we're maintaining elevated alert status until the Queen's address tomorrow. Good work, Lieutenant. Coordinate with the Zytharian security chief and make sure our people get rotated for rest. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Yes, Chief. As Morrison moved off to implement the orders, Chen's exhaustion finally caught up with her. She'd been running on adrenaline and necessity for hours. Now, with the immediate crisis contained, her body reminded her that she was human and tired and badly in need of rest. But sleep would have to wait. She had reports to file, security protocols to review, and a diplomatic address to prepare for. The night was far from over. Maya's voice pulled her back. The Queen says you should listen to your body. She says humans break more easily than Zytharians, and broken bridges help no one. Chen laughed softly. Is she going to be giving me health advice to you from now on? Maya's grin was pure 7-year-old mischief. Probably. She worries. It's part of being bonded. I worry about her too. Right now she's hungry, but pretending she's not because the medical people are still running tests. Tell her that if she's hungry, she should eat. Medical tests can wait. Maya's eyes unfocused. She says thank you, and that you should follow your own advice. And that was how Chen found herself sitting in the Queen's recovery chamber 20 minutes later, sharing a meal that consisted of nutrient supplements for her, and something that looked like liquid starlight for the Queen, while Maya taught them both a hand-clapping game from her school playground. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was the strangest diplomatic dinner Chen had ever attended. And somehow, watching a transformed alien queen learn a children's game from a 7-year-old human girl while the station's security forces hunted conspirators and prepared for tomorrow's assembly, Chen thought this might be exactly what building bridges actually looked like. Messy. Improvised. Beautiful. Real. Tomorrow will be difficult, the Queen said, her vast consciousness touching Chen's mind through Maya's connection in a way that should have been invasive but felt more like an offered hand. The conspirator supporters will not surrender easily. There will be political complications, diplomatic tensions, possibly even additional threats. I know, Chen said. But tonight we won a victory that matters. We proved that different species can stand together. That's worth fighting for. Maya's small voice cut through the moment with perfect timing. You're both thinking too much. Finish your food. Then, the Queen needs to rest, and you need to sleep, and I need to go home and hug my parents some more because they're still scared even though they're trying not to show it. The Queen's laugh resonated through the chamber, a sound like wind chimes made of crystal. The child is wise beyond her years. The child is 7 and bossy, Maya said, but she was smiling. Chen stood, gathering her data pad and preparing to return to her duties. Get some rest, Your Majesty. Tomorrow we show the galaxy what we've built. Tomorrow we show the galaxy what they built, the Queen corrected, looking at Maya. One human child who ran toward danger instead of away from it. One commander who chose trust over protocol. And one queen who was saved by the very species some of her people sought to betray. That is the story we tell tomorrow. Not of politics or power, but of courage in small moments that change everything. Chen saluted, a gesture that crossed all species boundaries. Then, she walked out into the corridor where Morrison waited with the next crisis, the next decision, the next step in building something unprecedented. Behind her, she heard Maya's voice raised in song, teaching the Queen some playground rhyme about stars and friendship. The sound followed Chen through the station's corridors, a reminder that bridges were built not just with steel and protocol but with courage and trust and children brave enough to answer when queens called for help in the dark. The night had many hours left. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But right now, in this moment, humanity and Zytharian had taken a step towards something neither species had imagined possible. And it had started with one scream in the dark, and one human answer. 2/2.